Okay, we see that, guys? Find spots where people are doing that. Actually get caught by worse hands. A7C. It's a spot where you can clearly make money with your eyes closed. Deal with the bullshit and make the money. The poker dream, is it dead? Can you, the average man or woman, hope to make it in this 2025 poker climate? Let's talk about it. Wouldn't it be sick to go back to 2005 when nosebleeds were running around the clock? Or how about 2014 where decent Zoom games ran on the regular? Or even getting yourself into one of these stream games where whales are putting in hundreds of thousands with just 8 high? Well, unfortunately, that is not the climate that we find ourselves in. It is not just going to be handed to you. For you to make it in today's day and age, there is no mistake. You need to work hard, but you also need to work smart. You need to always have your nose to the ground to be finding the good spots where there is money up for grabs. Let's talk about win rate, what you essentially have to recreate time and time again when you sit down to play poker for you to make a career out of it. There are 3 essential variables. How good you are. If you are the best poker player in the world, it doesn't matter where you play. As long as you're in action, you're in business.
This is artwork right there. What a hand.
Variable number 2, how bad they are. There's been countless examples of poker players who have been scoffed at by their peers, yet who are the ones laughing? They're putting themselves in games with monkeys with hundreds of thousands in front of them.
Much. I'm probably just gonna gamble.
And finally, factor number 3, the rake. How much are the bastards pinching out of our pots? A big factor in your bottom line, something that is generally outside of your control, but still something we need to keep in mind. Okay, so there we have it. They are the parameters for you to make money. They are the boundaries of your success. Now you need to go away and control the controllables within those parameters. Make yourself the best poker player you can be. Sure, easier said than done. That is totally within your control and should absolutely be your number one focus. Giving yourself the best chance to play with edge in as many environments as possible by being the best poker player you can be. This isn't going to be a video where I exactly break down how to improve as a technical poker player, more so to this second point, that is within your control right here and now. Put yourself in the best spots. The players you're playing against in relation to your own ability is so unbelievably important and underrated as a factor within the poker community. If you had to choose between rising to the top in technical ability or networking to be able to find the best spots, I think it's a no-brainer where the money is. I've seen it for years across my career where there are some really technically talented poker players that haven't lasted because they neglected this part of the game. And the opposite is true. Some really average technical poker players have thrived because they excelled in putting themselves in good spots. So all well and good, how do we find these good spots? You start off by getting out there and having a fucking look around. I was literally just on a call with a student where he was describing a bunch of average regulars playing 18 hours a day on GG, simply grinding rake back. Every single one of those type of players would be better off getting off their ass and having a look if there's a better spot out there for them. They aren't going to jump out in front of you, make some connections, play on some underground sites, go play some live poker. The better you are as a poker player, the easier it will be for you to find a spot for yourself, hence the importance of factor number 1. But not all is lost if you're still on the come up in terms of your technical ability. We're just going to need to look a little bit harder, looking in some potentially untouched spots, looking in the corners where the rest of the crowd isn't necessarily looking. If you're thinking we can just rock up to GG or PokerStars and have an hourly rate handed to you, this is where you're failing. We want to be looking for situations where there are an abundance of losing players, as many as possible. The win rate comes from people losing. It is a zero-sum game. How many stronger players than us are there? How many people are going to be putting us in tough spots, denying our opportunities to make money off the weaker players, winning money off of us? And finally, how much are the bastards pinching? These are the 3 factors we're going to be keeping an eye out when we're looking for these spots. Where are these spots? Okay, we are off to check out our first spot. One underrated by all you. The local bloody casino. Let's go play some live poker and see how much win rate is up for grabs. How many punters are out there? Are there good pros or decent players in the game that are going to be pinching some money back off us? Is the rake reasonable? Are the stakes high enough? The big message that I'm bringing forward to you guys in this video is just assessing your options. You don't get to be picky and choosy if you are trying to do this for a crust. Where there is win rate is where you show up. Hear many people, I don't like to play live poker, it's too slow. I don't care if it's too slow. If you can make money there, deal with it. So off we go into Melbourne's famous Crown Casino. Disclaimer here to hopefully cover my ass if it comes to that. I have absolutely zero affiliation with Crown whatsoever. We're going to go check out the 2-5, hopefully 5-5, and maybe even 5-10 games. It's a Thursday afternoon. Let's go check out the action.
Anyone who's ever been to Crown before will know what I'm talking about. This has a very distinct smell. Smells like home.
It was pretty damn clear that we were going to like what we see from the get-go here. Lots of limping, lots of multi-way pots. I saw one pot open to $20. The dealer points at this older gentleman to tell him it's his turn to act. Instead of looking at his cards and making a decision, he literally just threw the 20 bucks in. It'll be no surprise to any of you guys playing live poker, but people are not worried about their chips. It's very loose, sloppy play around the edges, especially for small denominations less than $50. An older bloke at the table, I swear to God, would have VP'd 80% of hands for the 3 hours I was there, regardless of size. Cold calling all sorts of bets with Jack 7 offsuit. Types of play that is just simply unheard of in any other environment. Our first interesting hand here, we got moved over to the 5-5 after playing some 2-5 for about 20 minutes into a slightly bigger game. Same blinds, but everyone is a lot deeper. The game is good. Lots of loose, passive, splashy play. We open up the ace queen off under the gun and we go 6 ways. Every man and his dog's in there to see the flop of queen, queen, 4, 2 diamonds. Thank you very much. Both the blinds check it over to us. A situation where I think you certainly want to be betting. Multi-way in a live passive game, you want money to go into the middle. These players aren't aggressively going after pots. Even with pocket pairs and stuff like that, they're a chance to check. So don't let this one check through. Start building the pot first. Weak passive players with a very good hand that obviously wants money to go in the middle. We put in a $25 bet. It folds to the small blind who doesn't muck around and check raises to 75. Back on us, we have a decision here. This player had played a few hands aggressively prior to this, which doesn't mean a whole lot, but he's probably not your standard live player. He's still going to have a very merged range. I don't think he's going to be doing this with any sort of Jack 10 of hearts or 5-4 of clubs, pocket threes, these kind of hands. He's going to have a flush draw, a worse queen, maybe pocket nines. All hands will at least consider calling another bet. So with a very strong hand here, I decide to bump it up to 260 and he comes in for a call. Good news. Unfortunately, the turn degrades our hand, the 3 of diamonds. Of course, we have the ace of a suit to give us some backup here. He checks over to us. We and ah before putting in a small bet. We still think that there's enough worse queens, pocket pairs with a diamond to justify going for another bet and seeing what our opponent does. Unfortunately, he quickly min check raises. Of that range that got to turn, we are going to be in trouble. If he has queen jack suited, he's not all of a sudden going to start min clicking us with this timing after the turn degrades his hand. He's very often going to have a hand like king jack of diamonds, king 10 of diamonds that have obviously taken the lead. Nothing else to do here but call and hope we get there. We flick it in, jack of hearts river, and our opponent now hits the tank before eventually going all in, or basically all in. I think he left a few chips behind. Now everyone's instinct is to try and look for ways we can win the pot. Does he ever have king queen? Does he ever have some random bluff? A really good way of smashing live poker is making sure that you don't pay people off where it's very hard for them to have bluffs. As we said on flop, he's not check raising random air. He would have had a flush draw or a queen himself. Very unlikely he's going to turn pocket nines into a double street bluff with that turn timing. Obviously our hand has amazing properties to call with, but you're going to be up against a bluff here less than 10% of the time. Make the disciplined fold. We lay down. Unfortunately, don't get to see our man's cards, but pretty happy with the fold in hindsight. This next hand here is a little basic, but a very good little tip here to always be on your toes looking for pots to steal, especially the small ones. They will add up over a session. Don't be sitting on your hands. Always be paying attention to your opponent's interest levels. They will very often telegraph if they're in any way, shape or form keen on the pot. And when they're looking away, not interested, barely breathing on it, their ranges are very often skewing towards trash, leading to a situation where you could religiously steal. Old mate playing 80% hands chucks on the straddle. The cutoff playing $250 limps in. It's very rare for me to be playing over limps, but in a situation like this with 25 blinds effective, with 5 high, and a player who I know who's going to come along very often, we just want to see a flop here. We chuck in the 10 bucks, the 2 middle blinds get out of the way, and old mate in the big blind checks it back. 3 ways to ace jack 6 two-tone, checks over to us. We could stab here. I decided to take a shred off to see what they do on turn. The Queen of Hearts comes down and they both check it over to me again. Now here's a scenario where I think you should be firing up with all sorts of bluffs, even a hand as bad as 5-4 of hearts. Your opponents just simply don't have good hands. Live poker players love to merge off. So whenever they have a strong hand, an ace, even a decent queen, after the flop checks through, they're very often going to lead with it. That leaves their checking ranges incredibly weak and vulnerable, where we can put in a stab, get lots of fold equity here, and even if they do call, perhaps put in a very large bet on the river, going after what is almost certainly a range capped at one pair. This time gets through straight away, and we take down $40 that a lot of other regs in this pool would have let slide by.
Wrapping up our little sesh at Crown. Played about 3 hours. Game quality, absolutely amazing to be honest with you. Lots of wrecks, literally 2 regs across both of the tables that I've played. One of these guys call and open in position with 5-3 offsuit. One of them check back their option with pocket jacks, facing 3 or 4 limps. So half regs at best. Once upon a time, these like 2-5 and 5-5 games here in Melbourne were filled with pros. It'd be like 5 or 6 pros and 3 recs. And now it's literally 7 big spots and 1 half pro. So definitely a lot of win rate available there. The rake is bad. It's a $25 cap, so 5 big blinds, which sounds absurd, is absurd, but it's not unbeatable. Back in the day, me and my friends playing the 1-3, a 300 cap game, and the rake was $15, so 5 blinds, and all of us were beating that game for over $30 an hour. So that would be comparable. I'd say a win rate for good regs in this specific game in the 2-5 where the cap is 500, around 50, in the 5-5 where the cap is 1200, and a lot of the wrecks are actually playing that deep. The win rate would be certainly more than 10 blinds. I would say somewhere in the realm of 10 to 15 if you are taking all the spots and are clearly one of the best players at the table, which obviously that is easier said than done for many of us out there. But the point is, there is opportunity in there for sure. Obviously, once you guys aren't in Melbourne, I'm more just showing you the process of getting out there, having a look, assessing your options, and after you've seen what's out there, go play the best one where your win rate is going to be the highest.
Okay, the pros and cons of the CAS. First up, their game quality was absolutely amazing. Heaps of wrecks playing lots of hands and very few strong players slapping us for getting out of line and playing too many hands with them. When you're in an environment like this, you can really have a pretty crazy win rate by getting in there far more often than you should be able to and taking advantage of the very soft play. Sure, that is a craft in itself, but when you learn how to recognize when fold equity is good, you can be in a lot of pots, know when to have the foot on the gas, and really redline your way to an unbelievable win rate. Something like 30 blinds per 100 will be very achievable in a game like this. Yes, we're playing 25 hands an hour, but still that adds up to a decent outlay. No cheating, sure, there have been some instances of people being cheated in casinos, but the risk of being cheated is minuscule, which is certainly a weight off your shoulders. You don't have to be constantly on the ball looking out for this stuff, which is obviously a bonus. It's always there, a brick and mortar business. You can treat it like a 9 to 5 rocker, set your life around your playing schedule. Cons, rake, yes, the rake was bad. If you're playing anywhere outside of America, you're going to be dealing with comparable rake. But usually the game quality makes up for that. It is still well beatable. And if you are in America where the games are this soft, sometimes softer, sometimes bigger, and the rake is amazing, you should absolutely be considering this as your main spot, because I think the earning potential there, I know the earning potential there is amazing. Stakes versus hands per hour, we kind of touched on this. We're playing small and we're getting few hands in per hour, which obviously limits our hourly. We're never going to be making hundreds per hour in these games playing these stakes. If this was a 5-10 game, incentives would certainly shift and that hourly would go to a point where you'd certainly see more pros come into the game given that opportunity. And it is live. Us poker players tend to be a less social group of people. If socializing isn't your thing, you're going to have to deal with that. But again, we're putting our bottom line and our hourly rate as the number one priority. After all this, I think this is a B, certainly good earning potential. Now let's go check out our next spot. All right, we are firing up our second spot here, what I refer to as the underground sites. Again, I have no affiliation with any of these sites. Enter at your own peril. I'm simply here showing you what's out there. I'm not even going to name drop this site. This specific one doesn't come without its drawbacks. There's been many accusations of cheating, bots, lack of security, this, that, and the other. Now, does this mean that we put a line through it? In my opinion, it's still worth a look. If there are enough recreational players on here losing money and the rake is reasonable, let's go suss it out for ourselves. The way I really look at it, bots and the cheating really are just something getting in the way of our win rate like a good professional would be. Yes, there's probably some ethics there that you don't want to be giving money to the sites that aren't necessarily doing the right things, but it is your job as a pro to mostly put that stuff out of the way and be focused on finding spots where win rate is available to you. The corners. This is a really good way of thinking about anything that is restricting good poker players, professional poker players from playing with you is going to be a net benefit. Firstly, starting off with the sites themselves. If you're able to play on sites where accessibility is an issue, for bot farms and pros in Russia, chances are this place is going to be a better place to play than trying to battle it out with Vladimir and Dimitrov over in the East. If you're in Vegas or Pennsylvania, wherever it may be, anywhere where you have access to any sort of segregated site, chances are it's going to be a winner. Secondly, safety. Good professional poker players enjoy the software of a well-developed site like PokerStars or GG. They like the fact that they aren't going to lose their money, and fair enough. Now, this presents an opportunity for you, somewhere you need to be onto your risk assessment. These less regulated sites, chances are the games are going to be better for that reason. Now, that's not a free ticket to go out there and put your money on any godforsaken site. You need to have your wits about you. Don't go piling on buy-ins at a time, expecting your money to be safe. But there is a trade-off there. Actual quality of games, the amount of win rate that is available on those dodgy sites versus the risk you're taking. And you need to be ever presently assessing that risk in relation to the quality of the games. Other spots. For those of you who know me, know that I travel around the world to go and play live poker in areas where I know the games are good. That accessibility for Vlad and Dimitrov is low. I'm out there seeking out big, live, good poker cash games to play periodically, play a lot, and capture the EV within that spot that's good for me. It's a great example of this attitude, getting out there and finding a spot where there's money up for grabs and playing it a lot. Good professional poker players don't like to travel across the world to play 25 hands an hour. That's an opportunity for you. If you are interested in flirting with the idea of live poker, I have a great little free resource for you. I have developed a 3-part mini course to get you started on your journey to crushing live poker where you can make some serious money. Check it out in the link below. Home games. Another instance where there is some dodginess at bay, some risk assessment needs to be present, but it's a perfect example where there is a clear barrier between you and other professionals. If you can work your way into a spot like this and you can assess that there are people losing, there's a relatively low risk of being cheated, you're going to get paid, then this can be a perfectly viable option. Again, you need to have your wits about you. Okay, moving on. Let's just say we're lucky enough to have found a potential spot where we're cordoned off from at least some of the predatory professionals looking to suck the life out of the games. We can take this a step further and look for spots within the spots. That is a corner of that poker site or poker room where the masses might necessarily want to play. A really good example of this is full ring games. There's a big culture against wanting to play in 9-handed games online because you play less hands. It's not necessarily the pinnacle of online poker, therefore some of the good professionals might look down upon these games, and that presents an opportunity for you. And you want to be putting yourself in these spots where you're playing against the weakest poker players possible. Reg tables is another good example. Most of the good professionals want to play as many hands as possible, so they're playing in the zone pools on specific sites. If there is any sort of game structure where the masses aren't necessarily feeding towards, there might be some sort of weird side game, VPIP monitoring, whatever it may be. If there's any sort of filtration where it limits the accessibility, there is a potential for a spot to be, and that's where you should be putting yourself. Okay, let's jump into the action and assess this potential spot. Okay, we're starting off jumping into the 6 max 100 reg tables. We're going to be keeping an eye out for weaker players, seeing how strong the regs are, if there's any dodgy going on. We're basically just here assessing if it's a spot for us to potentially put time in, if there's win rate to compete with our other options. Straight off the bat here, we're seeing a weaker looking player, shorter stacked, limping. It's a good sign that there are recs getting about, plenty of short stacks. Pretty sure that this is going to be a viable spot to grind a decent hourly. Marking all the little things, identifying fish to try and get an idea of how many weaker players are in the pool. Short stack, just open shoves, 2x pot. Definitely going to be a weaker player here. 2x pot shove with jacks, open call, king 8. Very clear in our first few hands here that this is a decent spot to be playing poker. Getting run over though. Can't win a hand, but the games look good. More limping. Literally half the table here. More than half the table is are recreational players. Okay, did we see that, guys? Did we see that? This is what I mean. Find spots where people are doing that. Just jumping in here, as you've seen. Some craziness even going on in the 200 pool. We're going to check out these games and see if there's as many wrecks floating around. We're facing a 80% donk on 883. Things are looking optimistic. You would have thought that at 200 plus, there'd be more incentive for the bot farms. There'd be less wrecks playing. I'm once again a little optimistic about our chances of making money in this pool. One little downfall about these sites. Software is completely AIDS, completely written, but that is something we just have to deal with. We wouldn't be in games of this quality if everything was just schmick, would we? It's our bottom line we are concerned with. Games certainly look at least a little tougher, as you'd expect. Not seeing the copious amounts of wrecks like we saw at the 100 games. There is still a little bit of punting and still a little bit of promise up here. But the threat of the bots certainly getting higher as these stakes are increasing. Not just seeing an incredible amount of recreationals like we saw at the 100 games. Still think that there will be win rate here. You know, we have the odd short stack that's clearly a wreck, but otherwise people seem to be playing decently aggressively and sticky bot-like poker. I'm not jumping out of my skin to play in this pool, to be honest. Saw that ridiculous ace-jack-o hand out of the gates that really piqued my interest, but very little of that since. Nice whoop. Getting donked into when you have trips by a wreck who has a very merge. Thing is, we're just going to get stacks in versus all the merge stuff on the next street, so I think we keep in some crap, maybe allow a queen to continue up here. Chance he does something crazy with a king queen. Horrible turn card, obviously, losing the action from an ace. Flush now completes. Losing the action from a queen, sorry. Pretty tempted to check back, give a queen a chance to want to pay us off. Lots of fold equity for like an above pot sizing here, so I think we really need to go after a queen in like a middling sizing like this. The bulk of his range is a queen, so we need to go after that. You can target when your opponent very often has one specific group of hand. That's when you can play against that type of hand. You don't want to say I'm going to go all in here targeting an ace, because an ace barely exists, so it doesn't really hold water. Wrapping up this 6 max 200 sesh, initial impression was it's going to be just as good with that ace-jack-o 5-bet shove, but game quality certainly got worse. Seems like there's a much higher density of professionals or bots, and only a few recreationals. We're in the 51 games. We were seeing 2 to 3 wrecks on every table. Certainly wasn't the case up here. Wouldn't say you couldn't make money here, but you'd want to be confident in your game. You want to be game selecting, table by table, making sure you're not sitting in spots where the likelihood of you playing with bots is quite high, and there isn't a wreck to compensate for that. Having said all that, let's move on to some more corners of this site. We're going to check out the 200 ring games to see if that's any different. We are in the mix here in the 200 ring games. Let's see if this is a potential spot for us. Bumping up the ace-king over a open and a call. Big exploit shove there. I think that's a very strong line. People are going to react very cautiously to that. Very often that will be a full house first pull. I think that works quite well. Double flat call there. Then like small stab. You got M actually is going to raise here, hoping to get like 9s and random stabs to fold. Very strong line. Go through. No top up there. Playing three-handed here, I'd usually be very cautious, but this guy is shown to be putting in chips, hasn't topped up his stack, seems to be a human, therefore it's a spot. We've gone open limp, call 10, limp shove, short stack, probably a recreational player, queen 10-0. Okay, so we're seeing things here. Yeah, what more is there to say? A little corner of the site, away from those 200 reg tables where all of the good players seem to be congregating. We're going to go find ourselves in games that they're not necessarily interested in playing, where Rex might be. Posting, another thing you want to keep an eye out to identify Rex for sure. I don't think any sort of bot, usually Regs aren't posting, so will be indicative of a losing week. Wrapping up here in the ring games, certainly looked better. More Rex. The reg certainly felt a little weaker, reiterating that point of looking in the corners. We want to be fluid as poker players to find situations where people are losing and the other conditions around us are manageable. These ring games over half now look like a much better spot than the 6 max reg tables. Get out there and explore to find the spot for you. Okay, into the pros and cons for Underground Site X. Firstly, there was a good amount of Rex. It's very rare for you to be on a poker site where you're playing against more than 2 Rex on any one given table. Whenever you're seeing multiple Rex on a game, it's obviously a very good sign. Yes, this was linear to the stake we're playing. I'm sure it gets worse the higher you go. Even in that 200 pool, there are a good amount of Rex. At least decently promising that there are Rex, and not only Rex putting in money. You know, you play on some sites and there are Rex and they're actually decent poker players where, as we saw, there were some punters getting around, which is obviously huge for your bottom line. Yes, it was linear, but there still were some Rex getting around in that 200 pool. Very reasonable rake. I thought that the rake on this site was very good, and it is very good for the higher stake games. Anything above 500, it's less than one big blind at 5%, which is great, but they don't seem to have a linear structure down to the smaller games. Anything above 10 cent, 25 cent is under the same structure, which is 5% capped at $4 if you're playing 6-handed or more, which at 51, 4 big blinds at 5%, it's not amazing. It's actually pretty bad for online rake, if I'm being honest, and that might explain why there were a significant amount of recreational players. The bots are probably just sticking away from them, understanding that probably is a slight rake trap. I'm not sure how beatable that is. The games did just seem amazing. As we saw, there were 3 Rex on every table, people punting it in. I'm no data expert on what rake level is beatable, but 4 big blinds seems pretty tough. Fire Pro for said site, consistent action. There's games around the clock on this site. Rain, hail or shine, you'll be able to play basically whatever stake you want, which is obviously great for playing in different parts of the world. The cons, potential bots and cheating. There has been many different scandals, different publications about the shadiness of what's going on in this site. As soon as we jumped into that 200 pool, it was very obvious that there were a bunch of good looking players which generally run similar stats, so this stuff is without a doubt happening. My main point there was that if there is enough people losing good amounts of money, you can overcome the shadiness. You just have to be onto the tables you're specifically playing at, not sitting in games where you're short-handed, or even sitting in any game without a recreational to compensate for you losing against the bots and the cheaters. This was again linear with that stake, starting to think that there is a correlation between that reg structure and where the bots are potentially playing. That we definitely saw a much higher density of these bot-looking players at the 200 game. Software, without a doubt, will drive you mad. And again, it's about your bottom line. You need to be able to put up with the bullshit if that means that we're going to be able to take a win rate off the site. Yes, we're going to have to reboot. The site is going to crash on you in a big pot every now and then, but that is just something we might have to deal with to find ourselves the best potential spots. After all, I think I'm going to rate these conditions a C, just average with that rake at those 100 games. Just not really seeing it. I really wanted that to be a spot for you guys, and I was very optimistic seeing those amounts of recreational players, but 4 big blinds is pretty tough. Not to worry, let's move on to our next potential spot. The dreaded apps. Interesting development over the last 5 years where local poker communities can essentially create their own segregated pools and decide who gets to play and who doesn't. That limited access should cue to us that it will be a decent chance that these places will be a spot for us. Not without the drawbacks. Of course, there will be some shenanigans going on. Something we'll have to keep an eye out for. Where there is shenanigans, there is opportunity. As we saw on the underground sites, it's not all necessarily doom and gloom just because some nit said to never play there. Again, I have no affiliation. You'll never catch me agenting you to one of these random clubs. Play at your own peril. I'm simply trying to show you what's out there. Let's check out the action. We are finally set up here across a few different clubs, playing different formats, some with ante, some without. We're playing some squid down the bottom here. Differing stakes. That's the thing with these app games. It's never going to be standard, straightforward poker. We're going to be playing random formats that other people don't potentially want to play. So it can present the opportunity where it's rec heavy games, and they need to be, given that the rake is generally a lot higher in these privately run rooms. Seeing some posting to begin with, which is good news in the 2-4 game. Unfortunately here on the left, it looks like what's happened here, we're just facing a limp jam for 100 blinds. We are playing squid down the bottom here, which makes it definitely different. We're like late in the squid actually, so we probably should have considered that. And that's the thing, we're kind of in the Wild West here. We're playing heads up here on the left in some random club against some random guy that I'm not sure about. Games are going to be fickle. It's just a really different environment here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be a spot. And you go on there and suss how many wrecks are about, how bad that rake is, there's dodginess going on. If there are good players, we're not going to sit here and play all day if we think none of that is in our favour. But we're going to jump on and have a look, and then at the end of the day, assess our best options of all of the spots we've analysed. Because it's so late in the squid, we need to be playing so many hands, so you want to be playing a very robust limping strat. Good players will realise that you're very wide there and attack sufficiently, so we can just get the limp jam in very often and fully realise our equity. Actually get called by worse hands. A7C, so ranges are just much wider. We can't really look at this in isolation and see things are crazy. Yeah, things are a lot wider given the squid game is on. Nice and slow for us, huh? We got counterfeit. No good, unfortunate. Given that we are playing all of these random side games, there's antes, it does take a keen eye to understand if players are playing poorly. Like we could look at that A7 suited in isolation and say this guy's out of his mind. But with the dynamic of the squid game, ranges are just a lot wider. So that isn't necessarily a complete punt. So we need to probably play a little longer and see if people are doing things that are objectively bad. And that is making polarization mistakes, calling off in spots where it is obvious people don't have bluffs. All of these nuanced clues that people are actually losing money. We're just reg battling this guy up here. He's clearly a decent player, but there seems to be fish dropping in and out, which will be the case on these like smaller clubs. You do kind of just want to keep the game up until someone who is just a whopper sits down. We're obviously both losing playing heads up with the rake, but as soon as someone really good sits down, we can be in a really good situation. So I think I'm going to pure check raise this 6-4 on the left here. People will be wide pre c-bet pure and then be in a bad situation to defend. Obviously very wide, and if you knew I was doing this, you could punish us, but take it down. Snap calls. You actually can check this back. It's an amazing situation for us. We have a good amount of 6x, 3x. 10 does interact with our kind of bluffing range, so I don't expect to just get like mega paid here, but obviously going for value. This guy is a fair bitch. He was the one with the jack 3 of hearts. Like he's one of the regs at the pool who doesn't understand that that's like a nutted hand. Didn't understand that jack 3 of hearts earlier on was completely nutted versus our range to find the re-raise. So it's a good sign that someone who's willing to battle, obviously a reg within the pool, isn't a crusher. Don't want to be super deep with the squid, given that you want to be able to get your chips in a lot easier. So it actually is an advantage of being short. Things haven't exactly panned out in this little session, but I'm not super pessimistic. This game is certainly good. I think this game is fine. And this one seems probably the worst out of all of them, to be honest. Snap calling, very rarely going to be a 6. Really going to be a 10. It's going to be like random ace highs and like other floats. So we're going to put in the barrel here. Basically pure. Expecting to get that through heaps. He should probably just be raising massive when his head's up with someone else in the stand-up game, because there's no incentive for me to want to defend when I have a squid. And he's just going to c-bet this like always. So I think I'm just going to find a raise here because he has basically the deck. It's going to be forced to fold. Really liking the look of this club. Lots of just random looping, short stacks. It seems very straightforward, limp, passive, recreational type play. It's a spot where you can clearly make money with your eyes closed. This guy's like limped 4 or 5 hands in a row. He's going to be pretty damn wide. I have a feeling I'll be doing okay in the squid pool. Also, this guy's heads up with the squid and he's just like folding and folding and folding. This guy seems to be doing the opposite of just playing incredibly wide, trying to get the last squid. Go back to that nuanced assessment. Given the differing conditions, how much did his win there? I don't even know how this squid works. I'm about giving you guys a rant on my nuanced understanding. I don't even know how the fucking game works. How funny. But I still think I'm doing pretty well. But seriously, some of these guys don't seem to be playing it too well. So even when I don't know the freaking rules, I think I'm still winning. That might be me just being arrogant. I've never been known for my humbleness. Squid's off, so I don't know how it works. So we seem to take like an orbit off after the squid finishes. Playing some normal poker for a second. Nice flop. How was that? Wasn't even watching. The squid's not on, for crying out loud. Just means we're gonna get far more credit. Take down with a small c-bet. Sick. This is the thing about app games, they're gonna be very fickle. There isn't just a large pool of players behind the people actually playing in the game. So it is certainly annoying, but annoyingness is your friend, as we've learnt over this video. The more barriers, the more the masses aren't going to enjoy the environment, the more you can potentially slip on in there and deal with the bullshit and make the money. We saw this is probably our best game. We're playing 2-4 here. We're up against 4 or 5 recreationals. The rake is going to be challenging, but you'll usually get rake back. Good sized game against bad players. I'm optimistic. Wrapping up that sesh, interesting environment the apps are. Obviously, the amount of recs and good players, the games you're playing vary a lot from club to club, so you do just have to be very on the ball and aware of your environment at all times. With all those games, as we said, there's a nuanced understanding of how objectively bad people are playing, but you'll get the sense, as we saw at the top left there are just a lot of limping. It was an objectively a good loose passive game. We ended up bailing out of that anti-game because it wasn't exactly clear. There was nothing exactly jumping out at me where it was saying, yes, here's free money. And that's the reality of these kind of sketchy places to play. You want to make sure that they're good spots. You don't sit there blindly battling it out, hoping for the money to just come to you. The big part of the message I'm bringing forward in this idea is that you want to put yourself in spots where you're objectively doing well. You want to put yourself in spots where people are doing bad things, money's getting thrown around. Keep our nose to the ground, looking in random spots for them, and if it's not there, we bugger off and go to our next spot. Assessing the pros and cons of the apps. Of course, this is going to vary club to club significantly, but just off my brief view of a few clubs there, and the opportunity is presented amongst that cluster of potential places to play. My experience, there are always lots of recs. The way these clubs generally work, a group of like home games or local poker communities where there's a good handful of recs that the games run around until they go bad. But while they're running, or early in their inception, there are usually a good bunch of wrecks playing a lot. And in that segregation, that closed off nature, there is naturally just fewer stronger players. Igor and Dimitrov, whoever I mentioned earlier in the video, don't get the pleasure of playing because you need to know someone. Generally rid of bots. I say generally because I have heard of circumstances where bigger clubs are actually putting bots on there as market makers to make sure there's always games running. And that's actually a really good sign whether or not the games are rid of bots. If they're fickle like we saw and they're breaking, they're running around people, it's very unlikely that bots are playing. But if there are always games running, there's multiple tables, that fickleness isn't as real as it is in other clubs, you might need to be suspicious. The stakes are massive pro about the apps. You can play multiples bigger than you will be able to play on public sites, and the standard of play is significantly worse due to that closed off nature. Jimbo from Johnny's home game is willing to play 5-10 and doesn't have a swarm of pros jumping in to play on him as soon as he sits. You get to play with him consistently. The cons: the rake is obviously generally pretty bad. I would say it's around that 4 big blind mark, usually 10%, sometimes higher. But the thing is, you can get rake back. I've heard of instances of players getting up to 80% of their rake back, which is obviously massive. Definitely need to be wary of that. You need to try and negotiate the best rake back deal you can get. That's out of my hands, that's on you. The fickleness: it is annoying that the games aren't just running around the clock, and you need to be somewhat fluid to when these games get up and take advantage of the couple hours of gameplay you'll get a day per club. But if you're in multiple different clubs, you can work around this. Scammed: yes, there have certainly been instances of clubs going bad and not paying out, so that is certainly a factor. Don't be sending random Instagram accounts who are promising you good deals, money, and expecting it to be completely safe. I always make sure I know the person that I'm dealing with, or know someone in between that is securing my funds. The software is whatever. You generally can't run HUDs, but again, the games are soft. You deal with this kind of stuff. It's all about making money, playing against recreational players. So we're going to put these aesthetics aside for a second and concentrate on playing good games. Overall, I think I rate the apps a B+. Of course, this is ever changing. They're generally very good in their inception, and as more and more pros catch on, as more and more recs lose their money, they start to get crap and you need to look for the next spot. But while you have a good club you're in, play a lot.
Beautiful morning in LA here, out doing some errands as I usually do on a Monday. Games are usually a little flat, so I get out and get some other stuff done. Quick little yarn here that I've been thinking of, something I'm going to make some content out of, something that has become even more clear to me, something I've been thinking about for a while, is that it just really is a hustle. You know, it's a hustle. You don't get to be out here and just have it handed to you on a plate. Not like you ever necessarily have, but more so than ever, you really have to work for your win rate. And that work is multifaceted, in that you have to be making sure that you are the best poker player that you can possibly be, so that you can operate with edge in as many games as possible. Because the reality is, there isn't just dozens of spots for you to choose from where you can say, I'm going to make money there, let's go do it. So one, you need that technical ability. Two, you need to be making sure that you are finding spots, and those spots don't just jump out in front of you like they may have once did. There's a lot of different ways that we can go about this. That is traveling to find good spots, traveling far and wide, not just expecting to jump onto your local safe poker site and make good money. You have to be actively looking for the best spot in any one given moment, making sure that the recs are having a good time so they want to play with you in the future. There's a lot of things that goes into what I'm referring to as the hustle. It's certainly not just rock up and print an hourly rate like it may have been in the past. I have just pulled up at our fourth and final spot we're going to have a look at today, the Melbourne home game scene. The home game scene sometimes gets a bad rap, definitely an environment where some scummy people can hang out, certainly more likely to get cheated or stolen from in a game like this, but they can make for really good situations because of that accessibility. Not any old pro can just walk on in. You have to know people, and that can make for an environment where you luck out and get to play against 3 or 4 whales. If all those other worries are okay, well, let's play. Let's go check out the action.
into the action here. We are playing 2-5 officially. Lots of straddles getting around, which is very typical of an environment like this. Folds around to the button who opens to 40. The small blind chucks in the cold call, and we look down at 2 black 8s in the middle blind. Interesting decision here. Would definitely go either way. I generally think it's a little better to 3-bet, just because players' ranges will be far too wide. This cold calling range will have all sorts of offsuit junk in it, even though the button's gone to 4x. A loose home game player can have Jack 9 offsuit. There's always some weird dynamics here where you don't want to be always 3-betting. Let them see a flop every now and then. Don't be this relentless, obvious pro that's shutting people out of pots. You're going to piss people off. We're pretty card dead at this stage, so we go for the 3-bet. The straddle on the button, get out of the way, and we go heads up with the original cold caller. 7-6-4, pretty good flop for our hand. Small blind doesn't have too much behind it. He just upfront donks all in. Pretty easy decision here. Don't muck around, chuck the chips in. Our man can do this with worse hands. You could have pocket 5s, you can have flush draws, you can have some 7x. Yes, we're going to be beaten by pocket 9s or 7-6 suited from time to time, but when you're ahead of a decent chunk of value, you can never fold your hand. Turn is a lovely 5 of spades. We immediately flip over our hand and our man just goes to muck, so I guess he had some sort of A7 suited. We scoop a lovely $1,700 pot, and we give the table the heads up that we are out of here just before this hand. Under the gun refuses to put the straddle on. Every now and then you'll have a couple nits in the game that are just like, don't straddle, when everyone else is putting on double and triples. A little bit of a buzzkill, but anyway, under the gun one opens to 4x. We get a cold call in between, and we look down at 9 of spades in the cutoff. Again, close between all options here, really. Obviously looking to VP as much as possible, so I'd never be folding this in practice. Be calling a lot wider than this in a loose, splashy game, upholding the gambling environment. To be honest, we're in there with the 9 of spades. Big blind comes along and it comes down to 9-7-4 range. Checks over to me. We'd have a close decision here in theory. 2 checking ranges in between us and the big blind should be well protected, but they absolutely won't be in practice. We're going to have the best hand here far more often than we would do in a theoretical realm, really giving me the incentive to always want to bet my hand. When we have 6 live cards, that denial aspect is a lot more important than it would be if you were in a heads-up situation. We chuck in at $25 and every run comes along. 8 of diamonds turn, everyone checks to be, and an interesting decision. 2 of the main straight draws have got there, so we don't have the nuts here by any means. We can certainly shoot ourselves in the foot by betting this one. On the other hand, there is still probably a little bit of thin value to be had, some protection. We decide to go for another bet. We get around half pot. The big blind hits the tank, and for some reason I got the feeling that he was never considering folding. It was a decision between raise and call. He was putting on a song and dance, which made me very worried that he had turned some sort of straight. These player types are very rarely going to turn a hand like 7-6, 9-10 into a bluff. So if we got raised here, I'd probably just straight out of there, given all of those straights are available in 16 combos apiece. He lands on the smooth call after about 2 minutes of tanking. I was certain we were getting raised there towards the end of that tank. The other 2 players get out of the way, and we go to the lovely 9 of hearts. Cheers for that one. He now upfront donks for about 2/3 pot. What more else is there to say? Clear shove. I'm expecting this guy to have one of those straights. Basically, we're getting paid, bitches. We put on a fake tank for about 30 seconds before moving all the chips in, and he instantly shows his hand to his neighbor like he's been robbed out of his pot. Thinks it over for about 30 seconds, throws it in before tabling the Jack 10-0. Unfortunately, no good, sir, and there is more bad news. We have got to go within the next half hour. Your chips are coming home with me. Luckily, we gave the heads up. We actually do have to go. Hate to hit and run people, but I got shit to do.
Okay, just wrapping up this home game sesh. The game was good. We were playing 2-5 officially, but as always is the case in these kind of games, it is straddles and double straddles. So it effectively was 2-5-10, 1K cap. The game was pretty good, actually. There's always a couple home game regs getting around, and always a couple action players. So game was, certainly well beatable. Rake wasn't too bad, same as the casino, so $25 cap, 10%. When we're playing 2-5-10, that's obviously much better than playing 5-5 or 2-5 like we were at the Cass. 1K stacks, money flying around, definitely a pretty good spot. Obviously, there's always some weird dynamics in home games where you can't really leave when you want. The game always starts slow. I was sitting around for like an hour and a half before the game started, so it's never as smooth as you'd like it. But if you get yourself in a good spot and you trust the game, which is obviously is a big thing, I think we are pretty blessed here in Melbourne to have a relatively safe and quality home game scene, where in other parts of the world, I'm sure it's much shadier and you want to be a little more careful of where you're putting yourself and your money. But here in Melbourne anyway, very safe, good friendly people, game was really well run, and yeah, definitely a spot to make money.
Okay, the pros and cons of the home game scene. Similar to the CAS, any live environment, you're generally trading off hands per hour and rake for the size of the game and the game quality. So you usually get to play bigger against worse players, but a lot less hands and pay more money for it. There are lots of wrecks. Obviously, this will vary home game to home game, but usually the quality of the wrecks is much better. The big whales like to play in environments like this where they get treated like they're special. They get free drinks. They usually get attention from the girls at the game. There's just an aura about being within this scene that I think attracts the gambling type of person. The benefits are obviously great. Free food and drink usually. Obviously you're paying for it within the rake, but it feels like it's free when you're there anyway. And usually a fun atmosphere. Obviously something we're putting very low down on our list, but it is fun, especially when you're within a good group of people. I generally have a very good time when I'm at a home game. The cons, the rake is usually bad. It can be really bad depending on what part of the world you're in. I know in LA, rake can be absurd, up to like $200 a hand. If you're playing big enough and the game quality is good enough, that's not unbeatable. I know players that play in relatively small games with a $100 rake cap and they're winning. So the game needs to be amazing and you need to play a certain style, but it's not just line through it. Risk of being cheated obviously goes through the roof when you're at a home game, so you do need to be on high alert watching the dealer. I have been cheated at a home game before where the host was sitting in the one seat shuffling the cards and he was a mechanic, giving himself setups against other players. So it's certainly something you need to be on the ball with. Stakes, first hands per hour, same as the CAS. It's that trade-off of seeing much fewer hands. Do the stakes and the game quality account for that? And the hours, they usually suck. Home games tend to run overnight, usually starting at like 8 p.m, running through to all hours of the morning. That's not for me these days. I'm usually out of there by 11 p.m. to try and keep on a decent sleep schedule. But if I was a young and up and comer, I used to go all night playing 1-3 until like 8 in the morning, because that's when the games were best. If you're coming up and want to do this, you have to put these lifestyle things aside to put yourself in a spot where you're playing where your hourly is the highest, and that means making sacrifices. And finally here, the home game dynamic. It's usually a very cliquey kind of crew. There's some certain pressures to play in a certain way, which you should be doing if you're playing private games, not going after every spot. Don't want to be pissing people off. You generally want to try and tell people when you're leaving. There's just a little bit of limited freedom. Wouldn't say limited freedom, but there are some pressures to do things that you mightn't want to do. Overall, I'll give these conditions an earning potential a B. I think the game quality and the stakes were better than the casino, but just some of those cons, the hours, the limited availability of the games, bring it down to that level of the CAS. Remember, this is a rating for myself. The way I'm encouraging you guys to do it is to go out there and assess your options in terms of the conditions you are facing and the hourlies that you potentially can earn, to then make the decision for where you should be spending your time. So is the poker dream dead? Absolutely not, but it certainly ain't what it was. I'm still out there, my students are still out there making a good go of it, but you need to be proactive with your approach. It's a part of your job to continuously assess your options, continuously work on every aspect of your craft, to have you playing with edge within as many environments as possible. It was a lot of fun making this video, my first ever long form YouTube video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully plenty more content to come. Check out my Instagram page, and I plan on streaming on Twitch, if not by the time this is released, very soon. I'll catch you in the next one.